Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Arena Labs PvP podcast. I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Aiken and Crayola. I'm Sneakers, and we've also got a guest on today. We've got Illithex.
Hi. Hi, fellas.
So,
hey, fellas.
Yeah, so the first episode was not too bad. We got there. It's released. It's on Spotify. Tell my mum I made it. So, episode 2. Seeing how we go with it. We're joined, as I said, by our guest Illithex. He's someone who we've met recently, but you've been in the community quite a long time. How long have you been playing the game for?
Oh god, that's been since core days. I can't say I've played the game since beta, but I've dove into PvP before Heart of Thorns released, so about 5 to 6 years.
So kind of like me.
Yeah, it should be around the same time.
Awesome. Now, for those who might not know who you are,
the majority.
Yeah, you're by no means a chump. Like you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience at your disposal that you've accumulated over your time playing. Here's a big question: what's the highest rank you've reached in ranked? Or
that was about the middle of Leggy 1, but I've preferred a lot to play on alt accounts and play very diverse, so I'd often make new accounts and try to test something like site noding, which I never did before, and just get a new build and try to see how far can I push it. So yeah. Also, I should add that I haven't been too active in Ranked in terms of leaderboards, the 120 games, or the game in general, since about the time the new titles dropped, simply because I am too busy with university. So instead I found a lot of enjoyment through coaching or generally helping people, but also some really nice unranked banter, troll and whatnot.
Yeah, that's really interesting seeing how high you can get with a not a meme. Well, I would kind of say a meme build, but it's something that you don't have to have the pressure on, like a main account, unlike me who has one account and stresses out when you lose 7 out of 8 games while streaming.
Yes, I stressed out a lot too regarding main accounts. So for me, it was always just a bit more relaxed playing, but that should not be the point. So let's get on.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, as you mentioned earlier, you coach. So you are one of the thief coaches for the Welcome to PvP Discord. Am I right?
Check the link in the description, by the way.
Yeah, we'll
yes,
definitely put that.
Yes, it's in my opinion, a very great platform where you can have discussions on certain classes, but the community overall is pretty nice, I'd say, and you can get a lot of contacts there, or even people to puck with. Yeah,
I know that's where I've met a lot of my team. I think I put Bacon. You did I meet you there? I know a lot of the guys I met through either streams
you
or...
were just spamming map chat that you are looking for a route so badly.
I
couldn't resist and contacted you.
Yeah, so I know I have had people interested in the team that we play with, like message and seeing how they fit in with our team. So it is a great platform for among that. But the reason we've got Illithex on today is to pick his brain on the one subject which I know I'm completely interested in, is the art of the +1 and roaming.
Oof.
Quite a big topic.
Yeah, a very broad topic with a lot of details.
So hopefully we can improve those wannabe thieves like me and power revs to actually not suck and not rotate into wrong things, helping out our team, tips and tricks. But yeah, we'll definitely get into that. So I know my big question is, can you explain what, it's quite obvious in the name, +1 and roaming, but for those who don't know, can you explain the overall role of the classes and those that fit into it?
Okay, so the question is, how would you really describe the roaming and +1 style? I definitely describe it as a pretty focus style. It's your purpose isn't really set like a team fight or a side noder. You're, well, as the name suggests, roaming in between them, and you're basically creating numbers advantages and at the same time disadvantages. And your main purpose is to snowball a lead. And what defines a good roamer is basically spotting what is the most efficient play and where can I create the biggest lead. Yeah, so that would be like the overall start. What makes the good and the bad team, for example. Just analyzing the game and seeing where can I get the most value and how can I take the game over by myself.
Okay.
That's a beautiful evaluation.
Yeah, that's really well put. I think the follow-up question would be, what sort of examples of good and bad situations were there? Because I know that for me, I've got a bad habit of disengaging fights before I should, because I've got to go decap. What is it like? That is my big problem. I know. I often, when I'm duo queuing with Crayola or Aiken, Crayola more than anything, I'll get a down and then I'll be like, okay, I'm pushing to go get the decap, and he's like, no, we need to win, and I'm like, I did a boo boo. I messed up.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. There's always in between. You can do something wrong by doing it or not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, where to start? You had the problem of leaving too fast, but firstly, what would be a good and a bad thing? Firstly, you have to think about people's responsibilities. You are basically there to create a lead, and that lead is developed by freeing someone from his responsibility. I think the example with the side node is very good and basic. So imagine there's a 3v3 going on in the middle, and there is someone dueling on your home node. If you were to plus into that middle, very, very long fight, very sustainy, and you're a thief, you don't really want to take even fights. People will still be there and do something even if you just bursted someone. But let's say you gank 1v1 on the side node. Your side node is responsible for holding and capping the node, and protecting it and fighting whoever is on there. If you successfully get a big burst and kill someone on the side node, you won the entire node and you freed the side node from his responsibility. That enables him to roam. So and that's how you basically create the snowball, because then 2 people are coming inside of middle, and then it's gonna get nasty.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's basically the main thing. You want to free people from their responsibilities so they can help out elsewhere. But at the same time, the people you are ignoring are suffering a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the tricky thing, is you have to estimate, where can I be effective and do I throw right now if I'm not there? And then we see sneakers going decapping all the time. I know it's a common meme, thief go decap, and thief is just a decap, but now look at the damage. But what does decapping do? Yes, you can decap a node, but maybe your team is 4v5 and then trapped in spawn. Imagine they'd get it down because people are cocky, and you can actually turn a team fight there because you're there. So you always have to think of it like you're putting someone in an advantage and try to make a move with you. You enable someone, but at the same time you're letting others down. So yeah, I think that would be the first thing. Are there like any more specific questions? Because I think it's really difficult to pin down or just generally explain the role, since it's so decided on examples and individual situations.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's situational based, right? It's so relative to the exact situation that's going on regarding everything. Builds, then the score, the capped and uncapped points, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because that's something I've never heard of, is like freeing others from their responsibilities. I've heard like, so I would go in +1, burst someone down, make them waste their defensive skills, give my side node the advantage, then I'm usually going, okay, I'm out of there, I'm off to go help someone else. But I never even thought about, okay, am I helping them to get out of their thing? Are they going to still be side noding? Are they going to still be plussed? Or no?
Yeah, or are they just gonna come with you? For example, you have, let's say, Corolla on the Nate NG on far, and then you just got the far node. But what else happens? You could also move with you, and then you can pretty much wipe a team fight with all that burst damage of Thief and Hollow, for example. Yeah. Which is what we also saw played by rank 55 in the Masters of the Arena tournament.
Yeah, they kind of mastered that rotations with Zan and Sindh just rotating around, just obliterating people. Is
okay. Let's say a situation. There's a 3v3 mid. We just won a 2v1 bar, and they kept our close, right?
Ah, okay. So.
And what's the good situation? Let's say. Okay, so there's a bunch of situations that could happen, but what would be the best rotation for us in that scenario? Like, I would usually stay far and try to get people to kite to me so I could be outnumbered, or 1v1 so I could get out plus, right?
Exactly. So there, it often really depends on many circumstances. Also, the map. Usually it's called far and close just because the respawns are closer to each other. But what puts me a bit off in this example is that close was not contested at all. But usually then, of course, yeah, you want to full cap far. But if you cap that node, you actually want to defend it and play around it. What Syndrome and Zan, for example, did is that they might leave, or that they put something that's more sustaining and side node a focus there, and then instead have the engineer build that we're seeing is also fairly roamer heavy, not side noding, so that example is a bit weird. But yeah, usually just going by the basics, you should aim to get an advantage in middle and therefore extend that lead. Or what else could you do? You can leave, maybe try to get a plus in middle, or since no one is contesting close, right? That guy on close node that is kept by the enemy has nothing to do, so he might join the team fight. If you're a sneaky thief, you can stealth up, decap his node, and then come back to your side node, for example, on far, or try to get something done in middle. Because if middle gets pressured really hard, the Hollowsmith on far could, for example, come into middle as well. So there is the option of decap, which I would highly favor there.
Okay. I've actually just thought of a really interesting question, which comes up quite a lot with. I know on Eternal Colosseum, it's a very big talk point for Thief specifically. Maybe not some other roamers, but it probably will hit them. Is secondary objectives for maps? I know secondary, you only get them when it's a guarantee, effectively. But how important are they for a roamer to get? Like, can a roamer just ignore them and focus on the
Colosseum,
points?
The exact opposite should be the case. The buffs are extremely good since they are spread, since they are very significant stat buffs to your entire team.
Yeah.
So you should prioritize them and get familiar with their spawn timers, because it can often decide in team fights that are very even. The active buffs, like the Stomp or the Revive, are very high value. So I'd definitely prioritize these, for example, over a decap, simply because they give more fight power, but no points in return. But that fight power can often translate into points.
I'm so happy you said that, because me and Crayola have been saying this since every time we go into ranked, and I'll go push for them, and I've got that one dude pinging on the map being like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I can insta kill people. Why wouldn't you want me to get this?
Yeah, the damage buff is so significant if you're playing burst builds.
It's game changers.
I'd ping people, or for example, what you can usually do instead of flaming people in the text chat and whatever, creating a discussion, you could just ping your thief politely, draw on the map, remind him, hey, these buffs are about to come up, please just focus on them, or at least remind them that they exist, maybe draw on the map, help, but
Right,
don't be
exactly.
obnoxious. I think Ranked is so full of toxicity, you can kind of nicely direct people. We have a very great ping system, and it's so underused as the lower you get in rating.
Yeah, I always write numbers as to how many is where, because people don't
Yeah.
look at the map, and realize exactly who's where.
That's something I've had to learn as a thief. There's two things which I know personally was a real big learning curve for me, because I was learning the mechanics and as a thief, that's simply enough, but not making use of, I think something that will help overall players, like you were saying, to create where people are, especially in ranked, is using the mini map and the kill feed, the action log. I don't think people use that enough, because it's such a good indicator, like looking at the mini map going, oh, there's a teammate on far, or there's 2 people down, they've just got a down, how many people are there? And people don't use it, and then you see them running into 1v2s, 1v3s, outnumbered fights.
Regarding the minimap, sorry to cut you off there.
Go for it.
I think it's most important, it's your bread and butter for a roamer, since you just gain so much info and information from there. You just needed to know and estimate, okay, where can I get the most out of my time? Where can I create the most value? How many people are there? But also, side notice should really, really, really look more at their minimap. I know they are focused on their 1v1s, but what's even more important is being able to recognize while 1v1ing that the mid-team fight, for example, your team got wiped, and then there are people coming to plus you. So often you hear them scream, "Oh my god, I'm 1v3 or 1v2. What the fuck are you doing?" And actually, they could leave the node if they know they're gonna face 3 people. They can see that coming. Yeah, exactly. Leave the node, but you can have that informational advantage if you look at the kill feed and at the minimap.
Yeah.
And you should definitely utilize it as much as possible. But of course, we all know it's very hard to do, especially if you're in a very close fight. And it's more like a habit you should get familiar with, because you really need that intel. Alternatively, just to practice this a bit, you could play with the duo partner and just usually want to communicate what is going on if they're on the other side of the map, because that's a great thing. You really need all the information possible.
Okay, well, coming off the Roma side of things, I want to kind of nudge us into the +1ing sort of thing. When you +1, because there's lots of different types of Romas and classes that can +1, say like for example Power Rev and Thief. They're 2 completely different style. Well, they are both burst classes, but Rev's a lot more hard hitting. Thief has access to stealth with a surprise attack. What sort of thing, like when would be the right time to strike from a mechanical point of view, or as a +1? Do we wait for the side noder to make them waste the defensive skills if they haven't already, or do we just go like headstrong, just face palm it and just go for the burst, or do we hang back a little bit and wait for the side noder to kind of give us the all clear to get a clean hit off?
That's a nice thing. When approaching a node, you should again try to gather as much information as possible, and that means watching them from afar, seeing what skills do they use. Let's take the very simple example of a Spellbreaker. I know it's not played at all whatsoever, but you can just watch the time you're walking there. Do they use full counter? If not, assume they have full counter. You can, for example, also if you're with the duo partner, you can communicate essential skills like an elixir or other invulnerability skills, etc. So 1+1ing, you're asking whether or not you should wait for someone or just try to make the move first. It depends a lot, because the other one has to be aware, of course, that they're being plussed. So firstly, make use of the target system. Maybe just target them above their head, because then they definitely notice something is up. and then target the enemy. That way, you can open with the CC, which enables them to, for example, do their combo. The thing with Thief is that it doesn't have that toxic nuclear one-shot damage anymore. And Revenants have pretty significant but not complete one-shot damage anymore either. So they are, in that regard, reliant on other people's damage to get a 100-0 off. Yeah, so in that regard, you should really track. Also, what the enemy has, but also can he catch up, and what defense mechanisms does the dude you're plussing have? So, for example, is it a mesmer that can blink away? Then, as a thief, I don't want to just steal onto him, or no, let's say Revenant. I don't just want to face traverse onto him, because then he teleports away. Instead, I'd much rather walk up to him, so that he uses his blink, and I can follow him with phase traversal. So you always want to stick onto your target as much as possible and create the pressure, and you basically want to ensure that you have a mobility advantage, because you're the one having a cooldown advantage when plussing.
Okay.
So maybe that's a little insight, or if you feel like people are too slippery, slowly walk up to them. Hope that they didn't notice you, because obviously they might just leave the node very fast. Then you can obviously phase traversal, teleport, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, what's really important is getting these jumping puzzles down so they can't out-juke you, out-maneuver you, and be aware of the cooldowns. So, just like I mentioned, defensive cooldowns, mobility, and that's about it, because as soon as you land your spike, it's a significant burst. People are already fighting. It's not an even or fair fight. So it's usually on your side.
I think that's very well put there. I never even consider me, because I've got a bad habit of shadow stepping in, dropping the steal, and going straight for the backstab.
So you're blowing your most significant cooldown aside from steal to get in range, while you could
just walk up. Yeah, okay. Well, that's something I'm going to endeavor to.
Yeah.
I suppose we also have access to shadow shot as well to chase, but I think obviously they use initiative. So if you're going to be spamming Heartseeker and trying to get a big DPS and using headshot, it's probably, you are completely right.
But the question, for example, is when you're +1ing someone. Let's take a ranger, for example. Do you aim for specific skills to be interrupted? For example, when plussing rangers,
wait for the great sword block.
Plussing, not the great sword block. For example, the heal. Like what gives them basically a fight reset? You have to basically identify key skills, and then just wait for them, and wait with your CC for those significant moments. You can't just blow everything at once, since aiming your CC for interrupts of crucial skills, that will make your pluses way more lethal without ever dealing more damage. It just comes at the right time, and that makes it more deadlier.
That's really interesting how you mention the importance of interrupts. Now, obviously, swipe is an unblockable interrupt. There's a fun build which I was dabbling with, which you might enjoy as a thief, was using the distracting daggers. I really like it. I find it so much fun to do, because like dropping 3 interrupts which force them to go on a 10-second cooldown on anything is pretty fun.
Yeah, sadly it's not near viable.
It's not.
Pulmonary impact is 400 to 600 damage is a joke, but we all remember the headshot spam times with 3k, 4k interrupts, and that wasn't healthy either. But let's not get on the balance side of things. I just think knowing crucial skills and being able to recognize them and shut them down, basically the lockdown aspect of a 1+1 is very important. So after all, like, the general idea is you need matchup knowledge. You need to, as a roamer, you need to be familiar with everything. Like, you need a lot of knowledge outside of your class, which is why I personally love multi-classing. I don't
Well-
even have to be the best at it. You just need to understand what they have, and if you played it yourself, you know what's fucking you up, and therefore you will know how to fuck people up later on.
May I ask you, like, what do you think specifically the skills are? Like you mentioned with the ranger, I think definitely at the heal is their 1v1 resisting or whatever.
Heal, but if you're quick enough, you could go for the Great 3 mobility. But ranger overall is such a pain to plus. I, for example, like sometimes like to save. Well, okay, let's go over to some other examples.
Yeah.
Something pretty famous, promoting that principle was saving steel during the SD Thief meta for the Firebrand heal signet. You often saw ATs on Thief play revolved around keeping your steel in a team fight to interrupt that crucial signet, because your steel is unblockable and it rips through stab. Or well, unblockable swipe, steel is not unblockable, but you get the idea. So it's identifying key skills like these. Let's see. Okay, can you just mention, for example, some examples?
Right now, a good example would be how would you plus a hollow? Let's say, what would you be looking for?
Okay, so with the hollow smiths, the most important thing basically is their ridiculous blind pressure, and their defense comes from their shield skills. They have around 25-second cooldown, and their elixir. Aside from that, they're fairly vulnerable, but they got good resustain. So in order to kill the hollow, you want the defensive cooldowns to be blown. That way, that's why you have to be aware of the cooldowns when you're plussing, otherwise don't commit as hard to it. And you need to CC chain the hollow before he can kite away with elixir, as we all know it, or just jumping puzzles. So you want to be able to CC lock a hollow smith if possible, which is why Bassi is a very good option there.
Okay, guys, can I take it to a remotely different direction then?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Okay, and first of all, sorry if I speak like a fucking weirdo. I'm having some chin pain. Okay. Illithex, I'm receiving some complaints, not by myself, but I'm hearing them, let's say, about power rev in rank queue. That people, even though some people who has a significant spot in the community are complaining about it, and I think it needs to be addressed out, I guess. What do you think about the power rev? You think it's in a position that needs to be complained, or I don't know, maybe nerfed even?
Well, power ref in itself is a beautifully designed class. However, if we compare damages, DPS and everything, we can come to the conclusion that it's slightly overperforming. Yes, I think it's somewhat justified. The only reason why we didn't see power refs in the big tournaments were simply due to the fact that class stacking wasn't allowed. Ref overall is just such a strong pick at the moment, and it could definitely need some balance changes. I personally, since I play both Thief and Ref, like to make a decision when I choose to play, and I see a match. So whenever I see things get tankier and tankier, I pick up on Ref. And recently, in the recent metas, it's mostly been Revenant, and the squishier things get, if you see some Mesmers, very aggressive builds, Thief becomes a nice option again. But, I mean, well, if you think about it, always switching to Revenant because, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of tanky, yeah, I think I can +1 this too well. If I just was a Revenant, I can simply just blow them apart. Yes, Revenant is overperforming in that regard, since I often have the thought process of, well, yes, I can pick Thief here, but wouldn't just Revenant be even more deadly? The only downside you get is less mobility and stealth, and which plays a very significant role in coordinated play. But I personally feel like Ref can be a puck stomper. Ref has so much mechanical depth that nerfing it was kind of sad, but also kind of mandatory.
Yes.
So,
then I have another question. Let's say we tune down the power rev into in regard of damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
How we gonna how people gonna kill let's say mace block core garden build, let's say, let's just giving an example. That's very strong side noders. Who's gonna kill them?
So you're basically asking, okay, how do we deal with bunkers?
Well, I have to, because it feels like bunker classes are getting more stronger every patch. Like people were complaining about Kondirev. Yes, I agree, it needed to get nerfed, and I'm very happy about it because I don't have to play it anymore. But look now, those core guard. There is Scrapper, right? Very very strong and effective build. Feels like it. What else? Some druids, like
Ranger.
yeah,
Druid. I mean Ranger.
And the Mendesolbis, for example, or Renegades.
So yeah, would you?
That's a fair point, though. Aiken, seriously.
Yeah, if they nerf power rate, would sustain become more? Like, moving on to just kind of addressing that as a whole.
Bunky meta has never been good.
Yeah, as a
Combi meta has never been good.
As a roamer, is power more useful, or is, I suppose it's all going to be a burst regardless? So you've got like the Condi Thief, Condi Mirage, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it all designed because you don't want sustained damage, because then you're getting into the likes of Bruiser? But would power or Condi Burst be the better? What you would argue, or is that obviously dependent on team comps and what you're facing?
Yeah, it's a complete question of matchups. Do you have something that's very susceptible to Condi damage? Because the problem with bunker classes is probably that they can handle both too well. I think bunker classes are just a matter of like balance state, and
definitely
the way we play around it's very hard to pin down. Usually you can think of them like low. Usually they should be low, really hard to get off a point, but they should also have no real threat in that regard. We saw a bit of an issue with Kondirev there, for example, or something like a Renegade, completely owning the node, like making people unable to stand on it while being so tanky. Whereas Scrapper, for example, was pretty okay, because it was fairly low pressure unless you really got melee, and it just had some CC to knock people off.
Okay.
So usually you want, in that case, if we were thinking of a +1 situation again, we might not kill the bunker, but I would always stay as long as my dude gets hit the node capped, because a bunker like just wants to stand on node the entire time and keep it uncontested. If the node is in our favor, he is useless, because he has to fight so long to just get this node neutral, and during that time we got points ticking for our team and I don't have to be there. So usually bunkers are sort of something you want to avoid, or if you face them, you want to give node ownership to your side noder, but then you have to consider, well, does this retard lose it within the next 5 seconds or not? That's obviously something to take into account. So there we face a kind of different point, which is knowing your team and reading the situation to make the best assumption.
Points are really important as well. Like you make the situation as a +1er as well, right? As a thief, let's say, or a rep.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just make a decision based on the class that's on the side note, but you also look at the caps, what's capped, what's decapped, everything.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a situation which would be a good example.
Let's just say a couple of your team have wiped on mid. They've got the numbers advantage mid. You're on far with your side noder. So say that it's 3v2, 3v2 mid. Someone's close, decapping or something, and you're kind of stuck on far with your side noder versus their bunker.
You could think about leaving your side noder to regroup with your team and get them a head start back into the game, because your side noder can create value by dragging more than one player to him. Because if the side noder, for example, holds 2 people, there are 3 left for your team, and if you join your team, it's a 4v3.
Okay.
A bunker won't do much. But, well, yeah. Also, rotating into the bunker of your team is a misrotation, but you can kind of build on that.
Okay. So that's really
it's
interesting. How your bunker or side noder or duelist, whatever you want to call it, it's almost two peas in the same pod. Of Roma, you cannot have one without, or you're +1, you cannot have one without the other.
Yes, exactly. You will always put someone in a disadvantage if you give someone an advantage. That's the tragedy of the Roma, to put it very dramatically. The reason why it's so complicated, maybe, to think about, to talk about all these things, is because we have to take into account how people generally play, and we have to analyze and decide. Okay, yeah, this guy is trustworthy. He does a weird job. He rotates weirdly. I'm not going to plus that guy because he doesn't hold the node that I give to him, for example. So, in addition to all the weird aspects of, oh my god, where should I go? And now I have to calculate whatever. Insert a meme here. You also have to take into account who's the player, who is he playing against. There are so many variables that, for me personally as a Roma, I'd highly suggest to anyone to do a queue or get to know players and just generally interact with the community more, just so you can more sort of trust, because you're not doing your thing, you rely on others to do their thing correctly, so you can just enhance them.
So going on from what you've just said, I know something that we do when we're teaming up as an AT, like me, Creola, Tirov, and a bunch of the guys. There's something that I do where I simply ask them, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Do you want? Can I go?" Or something like that. If they say, "Yep, you can go," I'm off elsewhere. If they say, "No, stay," then I'll kind of stick around and help them achieve the node. Because I think that's an easy way. Obviously, in ranked and in a team environment, there's two completely different things.
Yes, in team, you can honestly also always communicate honestly. It's not a matter of ego. Like, oh yeah, I can easily beat this guy 1v1 or whatever. It's not about that. It's simply, can you hold the node, etc. Because it's there. These are things you have to take into account. There's nothing wrong with receiving a +1 if you play it properly. You're just demonstrating, oh yeah, I'm actually a good player. Now I'm going to roam, and I'll be back to hold my node again.
Brilliant.
So even though you might lose a 1v1, it still doesn't mean you can sort of pin a player down, wait for a +1, and then create an advantage elsewhere again.
Okay. Going back to what you've just said and things you've said in the past, that just kind of occurred to me. As long as the +1 or the dedicated roamer / the +1 player, so say the thief, mesmer, whatever, the rev, they're essentially trying to get other people to roam with them, if I'm right. So is that the role? So as you said, because I remember you saying earlier, you're freeing others from their responsibilities, such as your side noder, to allow them to roam as well.
Is it just their responsibility? What they do in the meantime is up to them. But often, I just try to get people in the right mindset, give them a reason why are they +1ing. They want to get as much value out of their action as possible. So when you have as a roamer, you can just decide, I go there, I go there, I go there. And then you kind of try to estimate which gives your team the most value. And therefore you just have to take that into consideration.
Okay, well, I've actually got one question that's kind of occurring to me, because we've talked about +1ing and things like that as the roamer. When would be an okay scenario to 1v1? Would it be a never? Because that's one rule that I try and keep to myself, is never being a 1v1. I could always be plussing someone. I do find myself in some situations where I'll be about to get a decap and I feel like, yeah, I could probably take them. But sometimes I'm thinking, am I wasting my time? Like, should especially, say, for example, the thief, which is what I play, be in duels, or should I just be running around trying to create disadvantage or advantages?
Well, just think, you thought to yourself then, okay, I think this is very inefficient, right? Or whatever you said. Yeah, so as soon as you start to notice that, then there's obviously something wrong. Of course, there are very few situations where you have to 1v1, or where you can take a 1v1. For example, you see a Mesmer that has been feeding for the entire game. Yeah, just pick him up quickly. But you should value your time, so you can do it. Holy shit, there's music playing from outside. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But
I
you
can't hear
should
it.
basically just always keep in mind the time you are investing, and then ask yourself, could I do something else that's more valuable elsewhere? The problem is, especially with Thief going close at the start, is that you are trying to fix people's mistakes, basically. Not going there is a mistake. Or you see, for example, your side node, your warrior ran from close into middle, and then he's just, as soon as he capped the node, he gets decapped. And then, when you go there as a thief, what reason has the warrior to go there? Because, oh, someone is dealing with it. I'm just here team fighting now.
Yeah.
You're basically in a place where you don't want to be, because you aren't as efficient as someone else would be with a better class there. And you're basically preventing yourself from doing your job. So something I often say is, try to focus on yourself. Don't fix other people's mistakes, because you especially, like in the example of Thief, you're not capable to the degree that they are, simply due to the class that you picked. So fixing people's mistake is a high risk, low reward thing to do. So yes, you can take certain 1v1 situations, and in a complete duel without PvP context, you can do a lot more. But it's just such a big time investment and a risk, because you're so vulnerable to +1s, and you cannot hold the node effectively. It's super inefficient. That's why you shouldn't. The majority of the 1v1s you find yourself in should never be really taken.
Yeah.
You can obviously like hold your node for a specific time. Let's say it's capped in your favor, and you're in voice comm and someone else is going to help you out. Yes, then you can stand on that point and hold it for a few seconds. But you should never make the node your responsibility.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to put it.
That's perfect.
You
I
can
think.
help others out, but it's not your responsibility. Don't take it over and try to fix these people's mistakes, because it's inefficient, and you can be more efficient and valuable for your team elsewhere. That's I think a good wrap. I think that's a good wrap up.
Yeah.
It sounds very reasonable.
I think we've covered quite a lot, and you've done. You've passed on a lot of knowledge and hints and tips and things like that, which is something I'm going to start applying. Not fixing people's mistakes. I like that, and I do find that myself doing that, especially when I was learning the game more. It was Thief go close every game, and especially playing with the guys. Yeah, I know. It's more important stealthing with the team and getting waiting around, getting an easy burst on someone and pushing far, maybe with your side node. It's so much better, because there's for those who maybe are lower ranks, who do play Thief and are pushing close. If you get pushed by any side noder, like there's nothing you could do, and it's wasted. So, but no, I think we've covered a lot there, guys.
Yes.
But for those who have stuck around and listened to the whole podcast, thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Illy, for coming on and talking.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope I could give some insight.
You gave a lot of insight, but definitely check out Illy's channel on YouTube. There's a lot of cool gameplay on there, a lot of good footage.
Yeah,
even though it's not focused on PvP, that's been a kind of side project, so to say.
Yeah, well, the editing skills are definitely impressive. That's one thing I really liked your most recent video with the dueling and the commentary of what's happening, breaking it down, which is really, really nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
I
for
watched
the
those
shout out.
videos years ago, so
Yeah. For those who don't know as well, we have got our in-house league still going on. So like our training gym, which I know Illy's been helping us out, teaching me a little bit on Power Rev and not to suck. So if you wanted to get involved, I'll include our info in the description. You can message myself, Crayola, or Tia Roth, and we'll get you almost initiated and get you involved. So
yeah, everything is in the description.
So thanks very much for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you all.